Yo, welcome back. I'm Clay, and today we've got the best FPS weapon ever made. This bolter has no words that can bring it any justice, so I'll just show you.
Oh yeah?
So as you can see, this thing is an absolute beast. Almost as beast as the 7 Gifts of Nurgle Darktide giveaway I'm doing, where all you have to do is get this video to 1K likes and comment hashtag ZerkerGang to win a free copy of Darktide or Steam card equivalent if you already own the game. And on top of that, all the videos linked in the description are also participating in their own giveaways. So good luck, and for now I'm lighting this off with the scale of this weapon for the people that are new to Warhammer 40k. The bolter is a weapon made for super soldiers, way bigger than a normal person, and the version we have is the most standard and OG of bolters. So imagine a normal human shooting a massive bulky weapon with no stock that shoots .75 caliber rocket propelled bolts. Now usually that would just rip your arms off, but in this case they plot armored the bolter and made it so there's no pressure inside it at all. Just the charge going off to push this massive beast out of the gun, and then it turns into a self-propelled rocket bolt of death. And honestly, in every 40k game that's ever come out, they never get the bolter right. It's so hard to do, but somehow Darktide has made this thing come to life in a way nobody in the world expected at all. The feel of this weapon is something that anybody who's ever enjoyed an FPS should absolutely try, because the feeling that this thing gives you when you shoot it off, I can't even describe how good it is. It's big, bulky, slow, and it has such an immense amount of power to back it up, and disrespects even the strongest bosses. Now I know what you're thinking, there's a ton of insanely well-made game guns, and I'd like to know what your favorite made ever was, but for me this doesn't even come close. The fantasy of this thing I had since I was a little kid just brought like crazy amounts of nostalgia to life for me, and I couldn't be happier about it. But if you're going to use it in Darktide, you're going to need a proper build to make sure that you make the most out of it. And now there's going to be 2 builds depending on the variant of bolter that you get, but I'm going to go over the W key speed run, all gas, no brakes build that can be done with any bolter at any stat line. And if you get lucky enough to get the pinning fire perk, it's pure mayhem, and it locks you into just W key everything on the map by just hit firing, and when you combo that with max reload speed, you never have to stop until you run out of ammo. So now we're back in the tier 5 damnation training room with our first loadout, and our first talent's going to be confirmed kill. It's just infinite toughness with the energy we bring to the table. Second is tactical reload, because the speed matters quite a bit on the bolt cock. So try to never fire down to 0 ammo, always leave at least 1 in the clip. Third is bio-optic targeting, too good for team play not to take. Fourth is duck and dive for infinite stamina. Fifth is one after another for the 30% reload speed on elite kill. And finally, the bigger they are. This is probably one of my favorite talents to take just as a sharpshooter, because it lets you just control the entire map, and this build really shines in moments like this. That's one of the strongest bosses you can even fight on Darktide, and I absolutely blew him away on tier 4. So any boss, any elite that you run into, you just absolutely delete them off the map, and you get to spam reload to ignore any kind of real threat. Even the Ogrins with a shield get staggered and blown away in seconds by this thing. So as you can see, this lets you handle every situation basically just by yourself, and you just become an absolute solo carry menace. But now for the variant sniping build that requires the 75% plus reload speed bolter, or it just doesn't feel that good. So we're going to light it off with confirmed kill as the first one. Then you take snipe for the bonus damage. It makes you shine about as bright as the Emperor. Third, bio-optic targeting. And fourth, duck and dive. This is really going to make our next talent thrive. And yes, it does suck that they nerfed the dodge to 1 second, but it lets you have infinite accuracy with this build, because when there's more than 5 targets shooting at you or whatever, you dodge once and you get 100% of your stamina back. It's ridiculous. And when you combo it with Deadshot, it removes the sway from the bolter altogether. And it really lets you drop bodies like a boss, so you can just be dashing around and delete everything. But it does take a little bit of practice to like dash. You just dash, wait for a second, pop, you're all set. And of course, 6, the bigger they are, again, it's just too good not to take, because it lets you hunt those hardest targets across the map. And these Ogrins can be an absolute nightmare for people to handle, because most people aren't bringing armor penetrating weapons to the table. So being able to solo them in a few shots across the map makes a massive difference on tier 4 and 5. So as you can see, this build is a great hard carry that compensates for the bolter sway weakness in a massive way. And it gives it crit chance. The combo is just insanely good, and I do find that I'm almost never standing still long enough for me to make use of the reduced threat perk with the camo expert. But if you find yourself standing still a lot because you don't like the spam dashing, I know it's not going to be for everybody. You can drop duck and dive for the camo expert, and it's just going to be a personal preference choice at that stage. But I really recommend you try My Way Out for more than just one game, because once you get used to it, you really do feel rewarded, especially when the pinning fire is coming in, because you can just spam dodge out of it. It's just crazy. But just to compare both builds, I know a lot of people aren't going to like to pull the bolt back every single time they take the weapon out, and it feels a lot better with the reload build, simply because the reload speed actually affects the bolt pullback speed, and you reset to position to shoot. But the best part about the sniping build and taking that duck and dive talent is when we dodge any ranged attack. Even with our melee weapon out, we get stamina back, which means that we have infinite stamina to delete everything with. And as you know from the plasma gun guide, our trusty power sword is the best weapon in the game, especially when you have this perk, because if it cleaves ahead on its first swing, it can infinitely cleave through everything else in front of it. So as you can see, I'm cleaving my way through a horde with this thing like no tomorrow. And I think for both builds, the power sword perfectly complements this kind of playstyle, just for running and gunning, going as fast as you can, or falling back and dealing with everything perfectly. And worst case scenario, you run out of ammo and you just have to assassinate all the ranged mobs. You could just keep slide canceling and dashing and dodging towards them, and there's nothing they can do about it. So you really get to round your build out with either spec as the power sword, but you get a lot more benefit to your melee weapon by taking that duck and dive talent. So you just have to think you're running and gunning with the reload speed, sucking up all the ammo, or you're sliding and gliding with the plasma sword, going as deep as possible while still being able to just push F at any time, automatically pull your bolter out, and just pick off every single elite target on the map before they can even be a threat to your team. And the best part about either build is anytime that you get into trouble, anytime you get overwhelmed, anytime anything happens, you can just hold L and B down and evaporate everything in front of you, which really just makes me feel a way that I can't describe. I love it. So I'd like to know what you think about both of my builds. I do test these pretty extensively on all difficulties and make my friends suffer through endless Horde 5 lobbies to limit test. So if you're ever interested in testing them out with me, jump in Discord. I've been putting tons of random groups together just for fun, and I'm seriously attempting tier 5 endless Hordes with different builds to see which handles it the absolute best, and so far the bolter has gotten me the furthest through one of those lobbies. And I'd just like to get more people involved in the fun. So when I use these builds, I rock the sniper build on 4 and 5. It just feels the most well-rounded, being able to have benefit on my melee weapon while at the same time being able to drop everything, and the accuracy and just the devastating power of the bolter, just to be able to take all the high prio threats out, no problem, really adds a level that's gotten me the absolute furthest. But when I'm speedrunning for weekly missions on like level 3 and below, just to like get them out of the way, I think the reload build just goes a lot faster and is a lot better in those situations, just because you don't have to really think. It's just like go, go, go. So there's one thing that was bothering me that just made me want to put a build together that could just carry absolute everything, and it's a tier 3 plus difficulty, is just random people that are low level or low power level getting in. And I get that it's not really that difficult, but when you have to carry someone, sometimes it does become very difficult, especially because the power level of the player is what actually matters, and they can't deal with almost anything on the map. Sometimes they're hitting them up 4 or 5 times in like tier 4 if their weapon's not powerful enough. So Fat Shark really needs to address this, in my opinion, because these things do have power levels associated to them, and anyone without a level of power that can't participate correctly shouldn't even be allowed to queue up in random matchmaking. So like 250 for tier 3, 300 for tier 4, and like 380 plus for tier 5. In my opinion, this would be pretty fair, because that's about the power level you would need to beat all the mobs in there pretty consistently and actually be able to pull your own weight, because I think a lot of people don't really understand they're just a body doing ZTPS and just dragging everyone else down, because it just lets you queue up. So like, how would you know until you get in there and you're doing no damage? But there's also the people that are getting carried and abusing it, which are the same people that'll complain if it gets removed. So I really think this would just smooth matchmaking out and make it more fun and enjoyable for everyone, be you a veteran or a noob or somebody who's just queuing. It would just curve it out so that everybody was more consistent in the lobbies, and I think it would just be more fun across the board. And that's also why I started loving the bolter so much, is it just lets you deal with every situation the game throws at me almost perfectly, and it lets me carry those lobbies that you really just get stuck in sometimes. So be it mass spawns of elites, hordes of enemies, or even bots on my team, I can just deal with everything myself, except for that one random stupid mob that spawns behind you and just makes me slam my table every time. Oh my god!